Picture this. You walk into your neighborhood supermarket on a Tuesday morning, the same store where you've bought groceries for the past 5 years, and the doors are locked. There's a faded paper sign taped to the glass that reads, "Store closing permanently. Thank you for your business." The parking lot is empty, the lights inside are off, and you're standing there with a grocery list in your hand, wondering what just happened and where you're supposed to buy food now. When was the last time you actually thought about whether your grocery store would still be there next month? Most people assume supermarkets are permanent fixtures, as reliable as the post office. But here's the truth. Hundreds of supermarket locations have closed permanently in the past 18 months alone, and the wave is just getting started. This isn't a regional problem. This is happening to major grocery stores across the country, from coast to coast. What I'm about to show you will change how you see that weekly shopping trip forever. The grocery industry has been hiding a crisis that's about to explode. We're talking about debt that can never be repaid, rent that can't be afforded, profit margins that disappeared years ago, online competitors eating market share alive, workers who quit faster than they can be replaced, supply chains that are permanently broken, and investment vultures deliberately destroying stores for profit. This isn't speculation. This is what's happening right now while you're deciding between name brand and generic cereal. And the scary part? Your store might be next. Let's start with the money problem. Because your grocery store is drowning in debt, it will never be able to pay back. We're not talking about manageable business loans. We're talking about corporate debt so massive it would make your mortgage look like pocket change. Take Albertsons, one of the largest grocery chains in America. The company is carrying approximately $8 billion in long-term debt. Kroger has somewhere around $12 billion hanging over their head. These aren't numbers that get paid off with good quarterly sales. These are anchors designed to sink ships. Here's how it happened. During the 2000s and 2010s, grocery chains went on expansion sprees and merger binges, borrowing massive amounts to buy competitors and build new stores. Interest rates were low, and credit was cheap. Executives thought they could grow their way out of the debt. They were wrong. Now, interest rates have climbed, and these companies are spending hundreds of millions annually just servicing interest on loans they took out a decade ago. That's money that could go toward maintaining stores or paying workers. Instead, it's disappearing into debt repayment. Walk into almost any major chain supermarket, and you'll see the evidence. Flickering fluorescent lights that never get replaced. Broken freezer cases with out-of-order signs taped up for 6 months. Cracked floor tiles, peeling paint, bathrooms that look like they haven't been renovated since 1995. One former assistant manager posted online, "We had a walk-in cooler barely functioning for 8 months. Corporate kept saying they'd send a repair crew. They never did. Employees are the canaries in the coal mine. Hours get slashed. Overtime eliminated. Stores deteriorate in slow motion because there's no money to fix anything." But here's where it gets catastrophic. Grocery stores operate on profit margins so thin that even small debt payments can tip them into the red. We're talking 1 to 3% net profit in a good year. When you're servicing billions in debt, those percentages evaporate instantly. This creates a downward spiral. Debt payments drain cash. Stores cut costs everywhere. The shopping experience deteriorates. Customers go elsewhere. Revenue drops. Creditors demand payment, and the company collapses. Communities lose grocery stores not because of bad management, but because of financial engineering decisions made in boardrooms by people who never set foot in actual stores. But the debt crisis is just the first domino. Even if a grocery chain somehow paid off its loans, there's another nightmare bleeding them dry: the buildings themselves. Here's something most people don't realize. The vast majority of grocery stores don't own their buildings. They're tenants renting massive commercial spaces at rates that would make your landlord look generous. A typical supermarket occupies between 40,000 and 60,000 square feet. Commercial rent in decent locations runs $20 to $40 per square foot annually. Do the math, and you're looking at monthly rent payments between $80,000 and $200,000. every single month, just to keep the doors unlocked. That's before paying for a single employee or stocking a single shelf. And those rates keep climbing. When leases renew, landlords squeeze more money out. In gentrifying neighborhoods, rent can double or triple when a lease expires. Stores that were barely profitable suddenly become financial black holes overnight. One former district manager shared online, "We had a store making a small profit. Lease came up for renewal, and the landlord wanted to raise rent by 60%. We ran the numbers every way, and there was no scenario where that store could survive. We closed it within 6 months." That wasn't a failing business killed by competition. That was a working store executed by rent. Meanwhile, Amazon doesn't pay retail rent in prime shopping districts. They ship from warehouses in cheap industrial zones. Walmart owns many of its buildings. But mid-sized grocery chains are stuck paying retail rates while competing against companies with massive cost advantages. So you've got stores drowning in debt and bleeding rent money. Surely they're making decent profit on groceries? Wrong. Here's something that'll blow your mind. When you buy a $10 item at the grocery store, the store itself might only keep 15 to 25 cents. Pennies. The entire grocery industry operates on 1 to 3% net profit margins. You load up your cart with $100 of groceries. The store's profit is $1 to $3. Everything else goes to suppliers, labor, utilities, fees, theft, and that crushing rent. Compare that to any other retail business. Clothing stores operate on 25 to 40% margins. Electronics retailers make 10 to 15%. But grocery stores survive on volume, not profit per item, and that volume is disappearing. When costs rise, grocery stores are trapped. They can't pass increases directly to customers because shoppers will immediately go to competitors. They're in a pricing war with Walmart, Target, dollar stores, and Costco. Everyone is racing to the bottom, and traditional supermarkets are losing because they don't have the scale or leverage to compete. Then there's shrink, the industry term for inventory lost through theft, damage, or expiration. Most grocery stores lose 2 to 4% of total inventory to shrink. If your profit margin is 1 to 3% and your shrink is 2 to 4%, the math is catastrophic. Some stores are literally losing more to theft than they're making in profit. Retail theft has become epidemic. Laundry detergent locked behind plastic cases, razor blades in anti-theft boxes, baby formula kept at customer service. These are desperate attempts to stop the bleeding. But you can't lock up everything, and hiring security costs money stores don't have. And if shrinking margins and rising costs weren't enough, there's another threat quietly killing grocery stores faster than anything else: online competitors eating their lunch. Literally. Every time you click Add to Cart on Amazon Fresh or order groceries through Instacart, you're helping to kill the supermarket down your street. Online grocery sales went from 5% to 15% of total grocery spending in just 3 years. When you're making 1 to 3% profit and you lose even 10% of customers, you're finished. Amazon is leading the charge. Amazon Fresh delivers to your door. Whole Foods gives Prime members exclusive discounts. Amazon Go stores let you walk in, grab items, and walk out without touching a register. Meanwhile, your local supermarket is trying to get customers to use self-checkout machines that constantly malfunction. But Amazon is just the most visible threat. Instacart, DoorDash, Uber Eats have all moved into grocery delivery. And here's the twisted part. Many grocery stores partnered with these platforms because they're terrified of being left behind. Delivery platforms typically take 15 to 30% commission on every order. Remember those 1 to 3% margins? A grocery store partnering with Instacart is essentially paying for the privilege of losing money on every delivery order. But they can't refuse because customers expect the option. One former grocery chain executive described it: "We're paying delivery apps to steal our customers and destroy our margins. But if we don't, our competitors will, and we'll lose those customers anyway." Younger generations are growing up never learning the habit of in-person grocery shopping. They order from their phones while sitting on the couch. They never impulse buy the cookies near checkout. All those margin-boosting purchases grocery stores depend on? Gone. And people still go to physical stores, but mostly for immediate needs. They run in for milk and bread. The big basket shops, the $100 carts, the weekly stock-ups, those are happening online, so stores are left with cherry-picking customers while losing the bulk purchases that actually drove revenue. Former employees described the shift. Saturday mornings used to be chaos. Every register open, lines down the aisles. Now, it's dead. Maybe a third of the traffic we used to have. Meanwhile, in the back room, 3 people frantically pack online orders. We're busier than ever, but the store feels like a ghost town. The future emerging is dystopian for traditional supermarkets, ghost grocery fulfillment centers in cheap warehouse districts, staffed by pickers with scanners. No pretty displays, no wide aisles, just efficiency and automation. Physical grocery stores are stuck with expensive retail real estate designed for foot traffic that isn't coming anymore. But even if stores could compete with online shopping, they're facing another crisis. They literally cannot find human beings willing to work in their stores. Walk into any grocery store and count how many checkout lanes are actually open versus sitting dark and empty. That's not a scheduling problem. That's a crisis. Grocery stores can't hire or retain workers at wages they can afford to pay. The typical grocery store employee makes $12 to $16 per hour. Meanwhile, rent has exploded, food costs doubled, and that wage doesn't stretch anywhere close to what it used to. Those same workers can walk across the street to an Amazon warehouse and start at $17 to $20 per hour. Fast food chains offer $15 to $18 plus signing bonuses. Target starts at $15 to $17. Why would anyone choose to stock shelves for less money when they have better options everywhere else? The turnover rate is catastrophic. Stores hire workers, train them, and watch them quit within 3 to 6 months for better-paying jobs. Constant hiring cycles mean stores never have experienced staff. Self-checkout was supposed to solve this. It didn't. Self-checkout machines require constant supervision because they malfunction and theft has skyrocketed. Stores thought they were saving on labor costs. Instead, they're losing more to theft than they ever spent on cashiers. Many stores are closing pharmacy departments entirely because they can't find licensed pharmacists. Losing the pharmacy is devastating because it's a major traffic driver. Overnight stocking shifts are nearly impossible to fill. Shelves don't get stocked properly. Products end up in wrong places. The store looks disorganized because it is. But let's say a store somehow finds workers. They still have another massive problem. They don't have products to sell. Remember during the pandemic when you couldn't find toilet paper? That was temporary. What's happening now is permanent. The supply chain keeping grocery store shelves stocked is broken in fundamental ways. The average age of a commercial truck driver in America is 49 years old. The workforce is aging out, retiring in massive numbers, and almost nobody young is replacing them. Driving a truck requires special licensing, long hours away from home, and demanding physical labor. The pay hasn't kept up, so fewer people are becoming truckers. What does this mean for grocery stores? Delayed shipments becoming the norm. Orders sitting in distribution centers for days waiting for available drivers. Stores placing orders with no idea when products will actually arrive. Distribution centers themselves are understaffed. Products arrive from suppliers and sit in receiving areas for days before being sorted. The entire system has gone from just-in-time efficiency to barely-in-time chaos. Then there's vendor consolidation. Massive companies now control distribution for hundreds of brands. When one major supplier has problems, hundreds of stores lose access to entire product categories simultaneously. There's no backup, no redundancy. Stores experience this as random shortages that make no sense to customers. One week there's no pasta sauce. Next week pasta sauce is back but half the cereal aisle is empty. The just-in-time inventory model grocery stores relied on for decades has completely failed. The system was designed for efficiency, but only works when supply chains are reliable. When deliveries are delayed, stores run out constantly because they don't have buffer stock. Customers notice empty spots on shelves, cardboard spacers trying to hide gaps, permanent out-of-stock tags. The store looks incompetent even though the problem is beyond their control. Climate disruptions are making everything worse. Extreme weather events that used to be rare are now regular. Hurricanes, floods, wildfires, winter storms. Every disruption ripples through the supply chain, causing delays that take weeks to resolve. Crop failures from droughts affect produce availability and prices. The lettuce you used to buy for $2 now costs $5 when it's available at all, and customers blame the stores. They don't see the trucker shortage, the distribution center backlog, the vendor consolidation, the climate disruptions. They just see a store that can't keep basic items in stock. So we've got stores that can't pay their debts, can't afford their rent, can't make decent profits, can't compete online, can't find workers, and can't keep products in stock. You'd think it couldn't get worse. But here's the darkest part. Some stores aren't failing by accident. They're being killed on purpose by billionaire investors who profit from their destruction. Welcome to the private equity playbook, one of the most cynical schemes in American capitalism. Private equity firms buy businesses using massive borrowed money, a leveraged buyout. They put down maybe 20 to 30% using their own funds, then borrow the rest. But here's the evil genius part. They don't take on that debt themselves. They load it onto the company they just bought. So the grocery chain that was doing okay suddenly has billions in debt it never asked for. Debt created specifically to buy the company in the first place. Now the PE firm controls the grocery chain, and their goal isn't to run a successful business. Their goal is to extract as much cash as possible before the company collapses. They start cutting costs everywhere. Staff reductions, deferred maintenance, cheaper products, eliminated benefits. Quality deteriorates rapidly, but the PE firm doesn't care because they're not planning to own the company long term. They're planning to drain it dry and walk away rich while the company dies. One favorite move is called a sale-leaseback. The grocery chain owns valuable real estate. The PE firm sells those properties, pockets the cash, then leases the buildings back to the grocery chain at higher rates. So, the grocery store that used to own its buildings now pays rent to occupy spaces it used to own. They also strip and sell other assets. Distribution centers get sold. Pharmacy customer lists get sold to other companies. Loyalty program databases with millions of customer shopping habits get sold to data brokers. The company is being dismembered while still operating, like a car being stripped for parts while the engine is running. And the private equity firms charge management fees, billing the grocery chain millions annually for consulting services. One grocery chain bought by a PE firm paid over $50 million in management fees over 5 years, while simultaneously closing dozens of stores and laying off thousands of workers. The Toys R Us bankruptcy is the most infamous example, and it's being applied to grocery stores now. Toys R Us was profitable until PE firms bought it in 2005, loaded it with $5 billion of debt, then spent 13 years extracting fees until the company collapsed in 2017. 33,000 employees lost jobs. 800 stores closed. And the PE firms? They'd already taken out hundreds of millions in fees. They walked away rich while everyone else suffered. Several major grocery chains have been bought by PE firms using the exact same playbook. When stores close due to PE strip mining, it's often in neighborhoods already underserved. Food deserts expand. Elderly residents lose walking distance access to food. Poor families without cars have to take multiple buses to the next nearest store. Local economies suffer. Property values decline. The whole area deteriorates. And it all started because investors thousands of miles away decided there was more money in destroying the store than keeping it open. Regulatory failure has allowed this to continue unchecked. Laws that could prevent predatory debt loading don't exist or aren't enforced. There's no accountability, just a system designed to let rich people get richer by destroying things communities need. So let's circle back to where we started. You walking up to your neighborhood supermarket and finding locked doors and a closure sign nobody warned you about. That scenario isn't hypothetical. It's happening right now, accelerating faster than most people realize. The 7 factors we've covered: debt, rent, margins, online competition, labor shortages, supply chains, and private equity vultures aren't separate problems. They're feeding into each other, creating a death spiral most grocery stores cannot escape. When supermarkets close, food deserts expand. Elderly people who could walk to the store now have no access to fresh food. Poor families are forced to shop at dollar stores that offer terrible nutrition. Property values drop. Local economies suffer. The social fabric tears. Online delivery isn't a solution for everyone. It requires internet access, smartphones, credit cards, and addresses that delivery services reach. Rural communities, poor neighborhoods, elderly populations are being left behind in a future designed for young urban consumers with disposable income. What happens to society when basic food access becomes a luxury? We're about to find out. This is a slow-motion disaster unfolding in real time, and most people won't notice until it's too late, until their store is the one closing. So what can you do? Support local independent grocers when possible. Shop at co-ops and farmers markets if you have access. These smaller operations aren't immune to these problems, but they're often more resilient because they're not carrying massive debt or answering to private equity overlords. But more importantly, understand that this isn't inevitable. These closures aren't natural market forces. They're the result of policy choices, regulatory failures, and corporate greed we collectively allow to continue. We could have laws that prevent predatory debt loading. We could have regulations that stop asset stripping. We could have labor protections that ensure grocery workers make living wages. We don't have these things because we haven't demanded them loudly enough. The closures are accelerating. Hundreds of locations have already shut down. Hundreds more are on borrowed time. The next time you walk past your supermarket, really look at it. Notice the parking lot that's less full, the lights that don't get replaced, the empty shelf spaces, the understaffed departments. These aren't minor issues. These are symptoms of a business in crisis. Your store might look okay today, but how long will that last? 6 months? A year? The clock is ticking, and for many stores, time is almost up. Because here's the brutal truth. The empty shelves aren't coming. They're already here. The labor shortage isn't temporary. It's the new normal. The online takeover isn't a trend. It's a permanent shift. What we're witnessing isn't a rough patch for the grocery industry. It's the beginning of the end for the supermarket model, as we've known it for the past 70 years. Food access should be a given, not a privilege. But that's not where we're headed. We're headed toward a future where grocery shopping is either premium and expensive or cheap and terrible, with nothing in between. The middle-class supermarket is going extinct. If this gave you something to chew on, hit that like button. Subscribe so you don't miss when we expose what's really happening in industries that affect your daily life. Drop a comment. Have you noticed stores closing in your area? Are the shelves at your supermarket looking emptier? Share this video with someone who still thinks their grocery store is permanent. Thanks for watching. And remember, the next time someone tells you a store closure was inevitable, ask yourself, was it really? Or, was it debt, rent, margins, competition, labor, supply chains, and vultures? Your local supermarket may be gone by next year, and now you know exactly why.